the Baen Free Radio Hour.
On the podcast, Graveyard of Broken Typewriters, desecrated by alien religious nuts who believe using the letter R summons the demon Lexicon the Malevolent. Tragic unicorn torch nays, and refurbished AIs playing chess backwards.
Plus, we continue with the complete audiobook serialization of Sharon Lee and Steve Miller's Alliance of Equals. All right now.
Welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour podcast. It's an honor to have you along. I'm Baen editor Tony Daniel.
And I'm editorial assistant Christopher Rocchio.
We have an interview with Eric Flint and Mike Resnick this time, talking about their new collaboration, The Gods of Sagittarius. Eric and Mike, who are both incredibly prolific and busy on projects, and really good writers, of course, talk about the book, which is a bit of a science fiction romp, and about how they met and began the collaboration. It's really it's a convivial interview.
And, of course, we continue with our complete audiobook serialization of Alliance of Equals by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. So that's coming up. Now here's the news.
There's new fiction and non-fiction at the Baen.com website. Every month on the 15th, we get up some new stuff, and the previous stories go into what are turning into some amazing ebook collections. These are available as free ebook downloads at BaenEbooks.com, by the way. The stories are in the free short stories 2017, 2016, whatever, volumes, and the nonfiction articles are in free nonfiction 2017, etc. And you can download those to your e-reader at Baen.com. All formats supported, no matter what the gender of the e-reader power sockets.
This month, we have an all-new short story set in the world of science fiction novels Dark Victory and the upcoming Red Vengeance by Brendan Du Bois. This story is called A Fire on the Hill. 10 years ago, the Creepers invaded, destroying major cities, knocking out all modern technology, and holding major metropolitan centers captive. For 12-year-old Belinda Craft, it's the only world she's ever known. Like the rest of the survivors, she and her grandfather get along as best they can, making do on a small farm. Then the fight comes to them. Creepers are advancing on what is left of the United States Army. Belinda may be little more than a child, but in a world torn to shreds by an alien invasion, all must do their duty to help reestablish civilization.
We also have an excellent non-fiction piece examining Robert E. Lee's battle strategy by novelist and military historian J.R. Dunn. It's called Robert E. Lee and Decisive Battle, How Lee's Strategic Thinking is Portrayed in the Day After Gettysburg. And the Day After Gettysburg is the completion of a novel started by Robert Conroy. And J.R. Dunn finished it up after Conroy's untimely death. And in the book, they imagine a very different turning point to the American Civil War. In this month's essay, J.R. Dunn explores Lee's strengths and weaknesses as a military commander, arguing that Lee was seduced by the Napoleonic philosophy of fighting a decisive battle that settles a matter once and for all. A Fire on the Hill and Robert E. Lee and Decisive Battle are both available. They're on the front page at Baen.com. I want to welcome Eric Flint and Mike Resnick to the podcast. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Eric Flint is a master of alternate history science fiction with over 3 million books in print. He's the creator of the multiple New York Times bestselling Ring of Fire series, starting with first novel 1632. With David Drake, he has written 6 popular novels in the Belisarius alternate Roman history series and others with David. And David Weber collaborated on with Eric on 1633 and 1634, the Baltic War, and he and David Weber also have the 3-book series that the latest entry is Cauldron of Ghosts, Crown of Slaves, and the middle one is what?
Torch of Freedom.
Torch of Freedom. He's also co-authored with Reich Spohr, David Carrico, Katie Wentworth, Griffin Barber recently, Dave Freer, and many others. Eric's latest solo Ring of Fire novel is 1636, The Ottoman Onslaught. He was for many years a labor union activist, and he lives near Chicago, Illinois. Mike Resnick is the all-time leading finalist of Science Fiction Hugo Awards. He's won 5 times and received. I used to teach Karen Yaga in my science fiction literature class, by the way, at University of Texas at Dallas back when I was teaching. He's won 5 times, received a record 37 nominations. He's also the winner of the Nebula Award and other major awards in the USA, France, Japan, Spain, Catalonia, Croatia, Poland, and now you've won the award in China, right, Mike?
Right. I just won that a couple of months ago.
It's called the Galaxy.
It's called the Galaxy Award. It's their Hugo. And I won it in competition with everybody except the Chinese for Best Foreign Novel.
What was it for?
Karen Yaga.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Resnick, that is Mike, is also the author of 75 novels, 275 stories, probably more than that now, 3 screenplays, and the editor of many anthologies. His work has been translated into 27 languages, including Chinese, apparently. He is currently the editor of Stellar Guild Books and Galaxy's Edge magazine. And did I leave anything? I mean, there's no way to get it all in, Mike. Is there anything else recent that, that I don't have in there?
But a couple of years ago, Eric and I co-edited Jim Baen's Universe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's where we met.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you about that and how far you guys go back and what prompted this book. Let me talk about the book for a second. Now out at booksellers everywhere is a very cool and amusing science fiction collaboration between Eric Flint and Mike Resnick. It is called The Gods of Sagittarius. So, well, maybe we should start with that. How did you meet? How did you decide to was this the first time you've written together, or have you done other things? And what decided? How did you arrive at this book? The idea for it.
Well, we've done a short story together. Well, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, it's a short novella, actually. We wrote that a few years back, and it's kind of funny because what happened was Mike called me up and he'd gotten the offer, and he asked if I'm interested. I said sure, and then I totally forgot about it. And then he called me up and said, "Oh, hey Eric, this thing's due in 2 days," and I was leaving on a trip. So I said, "Mike, I'll wing it and I'll send you half of it tonight, and you finish it." So I did the first half, sent it to him. I had everything in there, including kitchen sink, and he finished it. And it was a lot of fun. And Mike's wife Carol read it, and she couldn't quite tell which one was wrote what. So it's always a good sign when you're collaborating with somebody. So we had fun with that. And then
What was the name of the story?
how it came about. It's called Mike. You came up with a title.
It's called a condensed 937-page novel. That's
So it's got a first title. It's called, I forgot what the first word is, but yeah, it's a condensed 987-word novel.
They have a little something to do with Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. It takes place in Roswell. Never mind. It's a very strange story, but we had a lot of fun with it. And then I don't remember exactly. We eventually decided let's take a crack at collaborating on a novel together. So we developed this outline. Then we didn't work on it. Well, I didn't work on it for years because I had other stuff got in the way, but finally was able to get to it. And we designed the book so that there are 2 main viewpoint groups of characters, one human, one alien. And Mike wrote the human characters, I wrote the alien characters, till we got toward the end, and then, we blended them together. So that way we could each sort of work separately when, because we're both very busy. It's a little hard to describe it. It's sort of tongue-in-cheek space opera. I sort of think of it as Indiana Jones, galactic Indiana Jones encounters the alien on a mission of vengeance. We had a lot of fun with it. it really isn't easy to describe it.
Yeah.
It's kind of an oddball book.
No, it
isn't. Huh?
Well, it's full of, I mean, it's full of inventiveness, and there's a huge amount of wordplay in there, which is incredibly fun, and there's some sense of wonder in there, science fiction. But it seemed to me it's got some definite echoes of kind of science fiction humor that we saw a lot of in the 70s and 80s, which it include books like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you would agree with that comparison. Was that?
It's a comparison people come up with. I mean, it's it's very generic, but yeah, I understand why people come up with it. It's kind of it's not very predictable which way the plot's going to go.
Is it reflective of you guys' sense of humor, do you think? I mean, it must be to some extent.
Well, I would assume it is. I have written, or I say I have gotten away with more than 100 funny stories in this field and about a dozen funny books, and I would never have thought that was possible in any other field.
It's tricky. It's not quite comedy, but it comes awfully close.
It takes certain things to such an extreme that it becomes. For example, one of the basic premises is. What if we had a planet called Cthulhu? What does that mean to everybody? Well, it means Lovecraft. And who was Lovecraft's most important character? Abdul al-Hazred, who one day at high noon in the middle of a crowded square was eaten by an unseen monster in front of everybody. What if on this planet Cthulhu in a prison, something unseen ate one of the prisoners? What if we did that seriously? Not tongue-in-cheek, except it comes out kind of tongue-in-cheek, and tried to examine why that happened and what the consequences were.
Well, we start on Cthulhu. Well, let's maybe talk about some of the characters, and then try to parse the tale, because the characters are fascinating too, and the humans and the aliens. It's not. I mean, it's not a jokey book. It's got humor in it. But it's got a serious, universe in jeopardy kind of narrative to it as well. What about Russell Tabor? We meet him at the start of the novel. He's the security guide.
My viewpoint character. He's a security man, a jack of all trades, but his specialty is saving stupid geniuses from their own bullshit. And he's been assigned to protect a totally clueless Rupert Shenoy, who is the genius that has been charged with finding out about the planet Cthulhu and the ancient race there that had once been there called the Old Ones. And it's not an easy job because first, Shenoy keeps going off on strange tangents, and secondly, an awful lot of these strange tangents happen to be right. That, a guy really was devoured by an invisible creature. There really was a race called the Old Ones, just like Lovecraft said. And they're very dangerous, and his job is to keep this genius alive long enough to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it seemed like that he was that both of them are sort of the reason they survive. Even is because they're both kind of polymath generalists in their way. Russell in a security guy kind of physical fashion, and Shenoy with he sees weirdnesses and patterns and things like that, right?
You have to assume they're all going to be jacks of all trades at that point in the galactic history that we're espousing, because you come into a different race almost every day. That's a really strange and very populated galaxy out there.
Shenoy's he's also a Sherlock Holmes type in that he certain aspects of regular life he doesn't care about that much, right?
I've always hated people like that myself. They seem to work very well in literature.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as long as the trick to it is you don't ever try to explain how their mind works, because
No, you can't do that.
yeah. So it's just, reader has to take it on faith. The thing I found, what I wanted to do with the parts I wrote were, I wanted to have these aliens have a very, very different theology than humans do. So they think humans are nuts, because humans have this idea of a benevolent God where it's obvious to the aliens that whatever deities exist are malevolent. All you got to do is look at the universe. And so their entire way of looking at the world is completely different from the way human beings look at it. And I just found that very amusing.
Yeah, there are several times they say that humans are just like insanely optimistic, in contrary to all the facts that are.
Yeah.
That's
I got to
keep going out there.
Yeah. Well, tell us about Akko then, Eric. She is an alien sort of explorer and interface. I mean, it's hard to say what her position is in human terms.
Well, her technical title is that she's a castigant, and basically she's a knee breaker for her. She's an enforcer for her sect. I mean, this particular alien species is divided up into a jillion religious sects and denominations, which have one thing in common, which is they all agree that whatever gods exist are obviously inimical. But then within that, they each have different sort of specific views of it. Her own sect is kind of considered by most of them kind of agnostic and almost heretical. And when the novel starts, her home cloister has been completely destroyed. She arrives and discovers that, as far as she knows, everyone's dead, including her 3 husbands. And so she sets off on a mission of vengeance, and she's convinced that it has to be one of these gods that did it because of the kind of bizarre weaponry being used. And then we go from there.
Well, could you kind of tell us about the setup that there's her, and she has this sort of AI familiar thing called Bresk, and there's the Warlock variation drive. Can you tell us about especially that drive? Those are some very interesting characters in themselves.
Yeah, it's the Warlock variation drive is very bizarre. They think initially that it's a propulsion mechanism. It's very strange. It goes back to the old ones, to the ancient gods. And then as the novel unfolds, it begin to realize that the Warlock variation drive is actually conscious. In fact, it's a lot smarter than they are. But also has a very different sort of, I don't know what you call it, view of the world, I guess you'd say.
It won't always do what you want it to do.
It won't always do what you want it to, and whatever it does do, it's likely to be pretty crazed. It was a lot of fun working with that character. It really was.
I should point out that the reason the book's structured the way it is, not only with each of us being able to do different parts without having to work side by side every day, we started with the humans because they're going to find enough strange things to kind of suck the reader into this future before Eric hits them with the really alien stuff. I mean, not that being eaten alive by invisible aliens isn't pretty alien itself, but Eric has no humans and no really human outlooks among his major characters, so it's much better to kind of gently draw the reader in with the humans we started with, or that I started with before we went to Eric's first section.
Yeah, and it gives us some because our guys are not are no slackers intellectually either, so they're speculating on the aliens while the aliens are sort of satirically
Yeah, but they're doing
speculating.
it all from a human viewpoint
Yeah,
and a human background.
yeah. Well, what? All right. So what happens on Cthulhu? We enter a Lovecraft world where some prisoners have been killed. Where does that point them to? What is it that?
I had the security guy and the genius and another member of their crew land there, and nobody believes what they've heard. I mean, until it happens again. Suddenly, it's very hard not to believe it.
And Akko comes there. At least they get a glimpse of her, right?
Well, you'd have to ask Eric about it.
Well, doesn't Akko float through at that point? They haven't met yet.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Your character kind of floats through, and they see the two sets of characters meet for the first time, at least.
Yeah, they meet accidentally, and actually it's kind of the time frame is actually reversed. It's hard to describe. It just worked out better that way. Yeah, they encounter each other, but they don't have any interchange. It's just literally they walk past each other, and that's their first encounter.
Yeah.
And then they don't actually meet and start interacting until much later in the novel. But they do have that first encounter on the first planet, Cthulhu. And then, wait, is that Mike? I forgot. Is that Cthulhu? Cornwallis? I can't remember. But anyway, but that's just a glancing encounter. I mean, they don't. In fact, it's only seen from the human viewpoint.
Yeah.
You know, from hang on a second, I gotta take this call. Hold on just one second.
Okay.
Well, I can take it from there.
Sure.
One of the characters I did, one of the aliens, was one because we needed some answers. I had an alien, I believe his name would be pronounced Juma, and
he's great.
he actually knows to a great extent what's going on, and I made him just a real sarcastic son of a bitch, but they have to play ball with him because he's the only guy who can give the humans the answers they're seeking.
Yeah. Well, this happens on Cornwallis, which is another planet. And Cornwallis is maybe my favorite section of the book, just because of all the wordplay that's going on there.
Yeah.
What?
It's fun to do.
It's not really. They don't even call it that necessarily.
They're a little vague here and there, answering questions. We started writing this in 2009. We had to put it off for a few years after we began because Eric had open heart surgery and fell way behind on his other assignments. And then more recently, Eric had cancer and fell further behind on some assignments. He'll do anything to get out of writing with me, you see.
Yeah, but we finished the novel before I got the cancer. It was the heart surgery that kind of, because I lost several months, and then I have a busy schedule, and
Eric
this book was a lot of fun, but
five books a year. I write 3 or 4. It just took us forever to get back on track.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that thing went on for like 5-6 years, something like that. Once we started working on it, it went pretty quickly.
So they, Rupert and Tabor meet. Shinoy and Tabor meet Jumai, who is this incredibly sarcastic octopus thing, right?
He was fun to do. He's kind of an alien me.
He's kind of scary in that he actually is kind of deadly, but he's also if you can keep him interested with words he won't kill you, sort of. Is that the?
Well, basically, without something like that, like words to interest him, there's no reason why he would let the main characters live. So we had to do something, if not to humanize him, at least to disarm him, and that did.
Yeah.
Because that's, none of these people that I did were so weird that you can't imagine that their analogs exist on Earth. I mean, not that they look like that or have some of those physical characteristics, but emotionally, mentally, they're not that far removed from strange people you know.
Yeah, sure. Well, Jumai reminded me a bit of a hitman kind of dude that a criminal that had a good sense of humor, but was still a criminal at heart.
Domestic hitman, yeah.
Yeah.
Which character is this?
Chuma, the one who actually knows something about what's going on, who Shinoi and Ticker find themselves with about halfway through the book or so.
Yeah. So, and then there's this the Empire that may be an empire or may called Matsk, where part of the book may take place. It's a pretty dangerous place. Why? And this is really where Akko and the human characters come together. What's the interaction like? Why does it take both of them to save the universe?
Well, that was kind of built into the original plot. So,
at one point, if they don't get together and work together, why the hell are we telling both their stories?
Well, there is that. How do they interact? What's the? Akko's. It's not exactly friendship.
What we wanted was humans and an alien species that really looked at the universe very, very differently. In fact, the way the book ends is the human character. He takes the life of Casablanca. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and the alien's immediate reaction is this some kind of trick? I mean, they really don't look at the world the same way, but they do wind up working together, and that was kind of the way Mike and I planned the thing from the get-go.
Yeah. There's a lot of sort of con man stuff going on here and there throughout the novel, putting up a front so that to bluster your way through a really tricky or sticky situation, right? It's a lot of the book's about how words are more powerful than anything, seems to me. Or is that too portentous or pretentious a statement about it?
Well, you would have to think that a pair of writers probably believe that.
Yeah.
True enough.
Yeah. So what was the mechanics of writing it? It took place, obviously it took you years of ramping up.
Well, we each wrote our own parts. I think, what did we do, about 6 parts before we had to combine?
Yeah, something like that. So,
we would tell the other where it was going, and at the end of the part, of course, we showed it to them, but, we're both so damn busy that once we had our plot and our characters, we didn't swap an awful lot of ideas, and we just each told our own stories because we knew going in what we wanted to do and say. Yeah.
Was there any sense that both of you were competing to do kind of the coolest thing or anything? Because I get the sense that that playing around with the language was a way of the other guy saying, "Well, you do that. You do this, man," something like that. Or is that not the way it was?
Well, we didn't have to do that. We're both very professional, very competent, and we like each other's writing. And we've worked together for a year. We never had a single disagreement the whole time, 3 years, whatever it was, we edited that magazine. So we didn't have any problems on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are y'all working on at the present?
Told anybody how we wound up doing the magazine together. If you got half a minute, I'll tell you a story.
Oh, absolutely, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had sold Eric a story, and we were going to the Worldcon in LA in 2006, and I handed him another story. He bought it at the con, which is unheard of. Editors don't go to cons to read submissions. And I mentioned that, he's doing 100,000 words or so. I had edited a ton of anthologies. If you give me a little 5,000 word section, every issue, I would take care of it and be that much less work for him. And we had never met before, and he looks me in the eye and says, "No, you do half the magazine or it's no deal." That's how we became co-editors.
Well, it sounds like you were birds of a feather from the beginning. What do you think there might be more Flint Resnick collaborations in store, or do you think that this maybe was the one you wanted to do?
Well, in my memory, is this was originally going to be a trilogy until it stretched out into 6, 7, 8 years. Wasn't it?
Well, not exactly. We proposed a trilogy to Tony, but she wanted to take it one book at a time.
Well, there's clearly it could go on.
Yeah, but we went under the assumption nobody was going to turn down the second or third book.
Yeah. I mean, it'll all depend on sales like it always does. But
So there may be more. Yeah, there's a setup at the end for possibly more, right?
oh yeah. No, it would be an easy book to continue. Sure.
It's a lot of fun. What are you working on, both of you, separately at the moment?
Right now, I am. I'm wrapping up. There's a book I'm doing at Dave Fair called All the Plagues of Hell that is the next book in the Heirs of Alexandria series that Dave and I have been working on for years with Misty Lackey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Misty's not writing this book. This is just Dave and I. And then Misty and I will write the next one in the series. So that's what I'm Dave has finished. He actually turned in the first draft of 2 years ago, but I was tied up with other stuff. So I started working on it. I thought I had it finished by now, except the problem is this stupid cancer I've got. The chemo's working fine against the cancer, but the problem is it depresses my immune system, so I keep getting these stupid ass infections. And, so I went in the hospital 6 days because of a damn abscess developed, and then I was just in the hospital 15 days because I developed pneumonia. And none of them are all that serious, but, if I didn't have a depressed immune system, I'd just shred them off, but I can't.
That's got to be incredibly, knowing how much you piece together things and just use every moment of your time. That's got to be frustrating for you.
It's extremely frustrating, and especially the last stretch. I was in the hospital 15 days, and I felt fine. It just, I knew why they were keeping me there. It's because the problem is pneumonia is not really a disease. It's a condition. It's kind of like a generalized inflammation of lungs, and it can be caused by 200 different things. Some of which, like fungal infections, can be really hairy. And it's hard to find out what it is. In fact, we still don't know. It's possible, not likely, but it's still possible it's a fungal infection. But it takes about 3 weeks for the cultures to grow. So I'm feeling fine. The only thing they actually did detect was they call mycoplasma, which is walking pneumonia, which is about the most form of pneumonia there is. I didn't feel it at all, I'll be honest with you. I felt fine. I developed occasional fever spikes, which I didn't feel. I had a very mild cough. Mostly I was bored stiff, but I couldn't do any work. It's just not really possible in a hospital room to get much work done. I managed to correct some page proofs and read a little bit. But so the point is, I'm a little behind on this book I'm doing Day Free. I should have it finished within 2-3 weeks.
I think we might be able to forgive you. A little bit.
Yeah, well,
considering the circumstances.
I'm working with Walter Hunt on a new project And then once I get all the Plagues of Hell finished, I will start working. I figure I'll start probably July or August on the next solo 1632 novel. Will be the sequel to Ottoman Onslaught. And in the meantime, Chuck Baen and I are working on a book, but he's doing most of the writing. It's also a 1632 series. It's called The Vatican Sanction, and it's a follow-on on the book we did, The Papal Stakes. And there's a lot of stuff coming. I mean, this year I've got 6 new novels coming out. It's more than I've ever had in my whole life. It just kind of was a little weird that I had all those slots available. And then next year probably about 3 or 4. One of them will be an anthology, the next Gazette, Graphic Gazette. So I keep busy. I mean, you know, there's no shortage of things that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll have to see how, you know, what the sales are like of Gods of Sagittarius. And, you know, if they're good enough, Mike and I'll keep going on the story.
Yeah. Well,
there's no way to know for a while yet.
Yeah, it sure is. It's fun. Mike.
Designed it so it could work as a standalone, which it does, but, you know.
Yeah, it's certainly readable. It's just a fun novel. What are you working on, Mike Resnick?
Well, I'm kind of busy, just like Eric is. I just turned 75, and last year I handed in 8 books. Right now, I'm in the middle of a trilogy I'm doing for Daw Books. The trilogy's title is the Dreamscape Trilogy. The 3 books are The Master of Dreams, The Mistress of Illusions, and The Lord of Nightmares. I'm going to be collaborating with Misty Lackey on a fantasy about horse racing, which is one of my passions. I don't bet, but for 11 years I did a weekly column on racing. And I'm going to be collaborating with Jody Lynn Nye on another book. And I've got a collection that is complete, but Harry the Book, it's a Damon Runyon-esque character I've been doing for years, but I have to wait contractually until the last couple of stories come out, since I sold first rights to them, before I put it together as a book. But sometime later this year I should be able to do that. And that'll hold me through Christmas.
Well, cool. What else might we want to say about Gods of Sagittarius that haven't?
I want to say go out and buy it.
Yes, definitely. Well, it's a delightful book.
I really like the cover art by Stéphane Martinier.
Oh yeah, it's got a beautiful cover, really nice. And it is in hardcover, and it's at booksellers everywhere at the moment. So I guess that.
I just think of one more thing I'm doing. As a matter of fact,
Sure.
I'll never see it in all likelihood. I'm editing 6 massive 160,000 word reprint anthologies of American writers for the Chinese in Chinese. And I won't be able to read a word of it, but I've already delivered the first couple.
Wow. Is it short story anthologies or novellas or?
Mostly short stories, here and there, a novelette. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's a way to bring everybody in it to Chinese attention. And as I say, because I'm dealing with them so much, people assume I speak Chinese. I don't. I happen to have a nice relationship with this company.
Cool. Do you have are they themed, or you got any Flint stories in there?
Any what stories?
Any Eric Flint stories?
I don't believe I have any Eric Flint stories in there yet, but we've still got 4 books to go. That's 600,000 words.
Well, I'll always put in a word for my favorite Eric story, which is Islands.
Would like to send me a couple of short stories. I'll sure as hell see that something gets in.
All right, Mike. We'll send you an email. We'll figure out which ones you might want.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Well, the interesting thing is I choose them, and then they turn down those that they don't think their audience will understand. One of the things I'm finding is the average Chinese on the street doesn't know enough about Judaism or Christianity to take a story steeped in that. And
that makes sense.
They don't know too. Those are just the first two that came to mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I choose, and then they accept about 75% of what I choose and explain why they can't do the other.
Interesting. Well, that's an amazing project, and the readership's going to probably be enormous for it. Sounds really cool.
Oh, it's really big out there. What do we draw for the World Cup? About 3,000-4,000 people these days? Never drew 10,000.
Yeah. Maybe
I've been invited to 2 regional conventions this year in China. One in Shanghai in August that I'm told draws 400,000, all of them English speakers. The whole convention's in English. And one in December in Chengdu province, which they expect to draw about 100,000 people. I mean, they dwarf things like Comic-Con.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
So that's a lot of readers.
That's a lot of readers. We gotta do more to get stuff in China. Anyway, well, the book out right now is The Gods of Sagittarius by Eric Flint and Mike Resnick. It's at booksellers everywhere. So Eric and Mike, thank you so much for being here to talk with us about it.
Well, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
This is another entry in Alliance of Equals, a Liaden Universe novel by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. Beset by the angry remnants of the Department of the Interior and challenged at every turn by opportunists on their new homeworld of Surebleak and low on funds, Clan Corval desperately needs to reestablish its position as one of the top trading clans in known space. To this end, Master Trader Sean Yoskalen and Corval's premier trade ship Dutiful Passage is on a mission to establish new business associations and to build a strong primary route that links well with existing loops and secondary routes. But reestablishing trade and preserving the lives of the few remaining members of the clan aren't all of Corval's problem. Matters come to a head as Dutiful Passage, accustomed to being welcomed and feted at those ports on its call list, finds itself denied docking and blacklisting while agents of the DOI mount armed attacks on others of Corval's traders under the very eyes of port security systems. Traveling with Dutiful Trader on this unsettling journey is Paddy Yoskalen, the master trader's heir and his apprentice. Paddy is eager to make up for time lost due to Corval's unpleasantness with the Department of the Interior, but she is also keeping a secret so intense that her coming of age and perhaps her very life is threatened by it. And here is the latest entry in Sharon Lee and Steve Miller's Alliance of Equals.
Chapter 2 Dutiful Passage. Paddy Yoskalen bounced out of the lift and trotted down the long hall toward hydroponics. She was smiling. Dance lessons always left her warm and happy. It wasn't just the exercise, though that was certainly welcome. It was also the knowledge that she was good at Menfriat, which was the name of the defensive art most commonly taught to pilots and other spacers. Of course, she had begun her lessons long before the remove to Runig's Rock, and had enjoyed them from the first. It was a particular pleasure to feel one's muscles working cleanly together in quick, sure movements. She had, she thought, slipping into hydroponics, comported herself well during the test session she had just completed with Arms Master Schneider. It was her expectation that she would find a reassignment to a more advanced class on her duty screen tomorrow. That pleased her too. One liked to do well, to excel at whatever one did. Grandfather Lucan said that the drive to excel was at Corval's heart, and Paddy believed that he was correct. After all, was it not said that there are 50 high houses, and then there is Corval? Patty caught her breath, warmth fading a little, as she opened her locker and retrieved her belt kit. For that was a thing said on Liaden, which was no longer home, because Corval's name had been struck from the Book of Clans. Now, on Liaden, they would say, there are 50 high houses. Now, on Liaden, they would say, a dragon does not change its nature. Which was perfectly correct, and nothing to do with the clan if lesser persons failed to take the time to understand the dragon's nature. A chime sounded discreetly, and there came the soft fizzing from the room beyond that meant the misters had come on. Patty caught her breath. She was going to be late. She threw her belt over her shoulder, slammed the locker door, and half ran to the assignment station. Her hand broke the beam, and she was logged in precisely on time. Sighing, she accessed the duty roster, belting the kit round her waist while she scanned the screen, looking for her name. Finding it near the bottom with the notation, Tank GR2, Thinning. She touched the screen, acknowledging receipt of her assignment, and again ran her eye down the list to find who else might be working this shift. Head technician Verath was in her office, the red triangle that meant "Do not disturb" next to her name. Good. Patty had no desire to disturb the head tech. Fa Chen was listed as on shift in HR6 repair. Patty grinned. HR6 shared an aisle with GR2. She would have company, agreeable company, this shift. Still grinning, Patty jogged down the aisle toward her assignment. Fa Chen had only come aboard at Billingston, filling the hole left in the roster by Dinref Dayaken's resignation. She was a few standards older than Patty, willing to answer questions and to ask them. Not that either of them would shirk their work, of course, but they might exchange some conversation, and working with Fa Chen was much preferable to sharing a shift and proximity with Inleen, Patty's fellow prentice, or with head tech Verath. Jerry, the other garden tech, was agreeable enough, but not much given to talk. She turned the corner, and there was a thin woman in green overalls, bent diligently above tank HR6, a toolbox open on the shelf beside her. "Fa Chen," she said. "I'm glad to see you." The gardener looked up, a ready smile on her face. "I'm glad to see you too, and on time." That was a joke. It might even be a joke with a point turned toward Inleen, who, in Patty's experience, had never in his life been on time. "Only imagine the ringing scold I would earn from the head tech if I were late," Patty said, pulling the log for GR2. Jerry had marked out the sections that wanted thinning, and in GR3, 2 sections that needed to be deadheaded. Patty nodded to herself and moved to the first marked section. GR2 was peas, and the first section was, in fact, fearfully overgrown. Patty dutifully performed the required measurements, testing the medium for moisture and acidity, logged the readings, and finally leaned in to run her fingers lightly over the fragile green seedlings. Thinning was soothing work in its way, though her attention and her care, as well as her hands, had to be in the garden, as Tech Verath had it. One needed first to observe the segment to be thinned, identifying the robust plants and those that were less so. On the first pass, those plants that were clearly failing would be removed and sacrificed to the composting frames. The second pass would take those seedlings that were somewhat more robust, but still unthrifty, and so on until only the healthiest and strongest seedlings remained. She hummed as she worked, a wordless little tune she had learned from Grandfather Lucan when they had sheltered in the rock together. The leaves were cool against her fingertips, and her attention was wholly engaged. "Do you think she would?" Fa Chen asked quietly. Patty blinked, her fingers fumbling among the seedlings. She raised her head, but Fa Chen was bent over her section, a diagnostic stick in her hand. Patty frowned, trying to recall her last. Ah, yes, Tech Vareth's likely reaction to Patty being tardy. Despite her determination to do well, Patty had felt from the beginning that Head Tech Vareth had taken her in dislike. She had not been able to discover why this was so. At first, she had wondered if there might be some deficiency in her work. But if that were the case, surely the tech would merely have corrected her. Instead of barely acknowledging her presence on the increasingly rare occasions when their schedules put them on the same shift. "Why wouldn't she scold me?" she asked Fa Chen, turning back to the seedlings. "She certainly scolds Inleen when he's late." "True, but Inleen's mother is not the captain of this ship." Patty blinked, her fingers gone still among the seedlings, wondering what Inleen's lineage had to do with... "As your mother is, the captain of this ship," Fa Chen continued, her voice gentle. Patty looked down at her fingers and moved them among the cool leaves, working deliberately now as she tried to think how best to explain. For it was an error of culture that Fa Chen posited, and a very disturbing conclusion drawn from it. "My mother," she said, her voice as careful as her fingers. "My mother is Vestin Yos Tomaz, Clan Ibrim." She raised her head slightly and saw Fa Chen pause, her head cocked to one side. She said nothing. Good, Patty thought. She wants to understand, to learn. "Now," she continued, still careful, "now, it is true that Priscilla Mendoza and my father are life mates, but that doesn't. Among Liadens, what that means is that she has come into Clan Corval, our clan, but she's not my mother. She's an elder in clan." Because life mates were understood to have one Melanti, and father was certainly Paddy's elder in clan, as well as Thodelm Yos Gallon, which meant that Priscilla, too, held a Thodelm's duty, and none of that, Patty realized, would answer the question that Tech Vareth and Fa Chen, too, needed to have answered, and might even confuse the issue. She paused, sorting through necessary and extraneous details. One could not, after all, teach a whole culture in one day. However, if one separated the involved Melantes, one might simplify enough without simplifying too much. What must be understood is that the Melanti of an elder in clan resides within the clan. The ship has its own order of Melanti, of command and discipline. On ship, the captain is captain for all the crew and administers discipline with an even hand. The captain of the dutiful passage does not permit crew, any crew, to be slovenly in their work. Somewhat breathless, she paused. Fa Chen had turned away from her work and was watching Patty closely. "Do I explain that well?" she asked tentatively. "You explained it very well," Fa Chen said, and turned back to the tank. Patty sighed. She had hoped that she wouldn't have to ask, but she must know. Did you mean me to understand that Tech Vereth would not instruct me, as she might Inleen, because of this misunderstanding of my relationship with the captain? There followed a long silence, during which Fa Chen had several instruments out of the toolbox. There came a definitive pop from inside the tank and a soft exclamation from the gardener. Patty bit her lip and bent back to her own task, trying to recapture the rhythm of the work. I am, I think, a step over a line, Fa Chen said at last. Let me try to reassure you while not moving any further in the wrong direction. There came another pause. Fa Chen was replacing items into her toolbox, a frown on her round face. Patty looked down and frowned herself. She had pulled a perfectly healthy seedling rather than the less healthy plant beside it. So much for keeping her mind in the garden. She placed the cold seedlings into the composting tray, then straightened, not willing to risk another life to her inattention. Across the aisle, Fa Chen also straightened and turned to face Patty. She bowed, gently, in some mode particular to her own people. In depth, it was close enough to the Liaden bow between equals, which was not quite exact, Fa Chen being Patty's senior in years and in training. Still, it would do as a demonstration of goodwill. Patty bowed in return. Fa Chen smiled. Yes, I think I may say that Head Tech Vereth and I were discussing the operations here in the garden. The Tech is pleased with your work and your comportment. The mention of your relationship to Captain Mendoza came as a comparison favorable to yourself while being unfavorable to another of the staff here. She tipped her head. Have I explained that well? So she had compared well to a co-worker. Almost she could hear Tech Vereth's voice. God's thanked. At least he's not the captain's daughter, and she doesn't stint her work. You have explained well, Patty told Fa Chen. She thought for a moment. Are you in a position to carry my explanation to Tech Vereth? I am, and I will, Fa Chen said firmly. Also, for my own better understanding, I will speak with the cultural officer. The cultural officer was the librarian, Lena Faldum, who had access to scout tapes and, if necessary, to scouts. May I, Fa Chen asked softly, ask another question in the same direction? Patty felt her stomach twist a little, foreseeing the question, but it was perfectly reasonable that it be asked. It was, in fact, necessary. Yes, she said, and managed a smile. But quickly, or I will not finish my shift work. Fa Chen smiled. Quickly, then. You are the child of the master trader. Yes, I am. She licked her lips. Again, Melanti comes into the matter. On this ship, I am the master trader's apprentice, and anyone who thinks that master trader Yos Gallen will permit error or sloth from his heir, his apprentice, or anyone who is under his hand must not know him very well. Fa Chen laughed. Well said. And now, having done with my work, I will leave you to yours. I will note in the log that I diverted you to my own purposes, which will placate the head tech, should you not finish. Thank you, Patty said. But I would really rather finish. Fa Chen smiled. Of course you would, she said. Vivalange Prosperu stopped at Gileadi to take on supplies. Leaving those details with Dulcie, the uncle went below to check on their guests. "How fare the pilots?" she asked when he returned to the galley. Uncle tipped his head, frowning slightly. "Progress is satisfactory. He rushes headlong toward waking, while she prefers a more deliberate pace. I have amended his speed somewhat, though more for the comfort of the ship than because I fear he will do himself harm. With such an abundance of pure material, there is very little chance now that he will fail. Still, I would not have him precede her by too many days. Enough so that he might guide her, but yet not so much that he becomes bored, shall I say." Dulcie laughed. "A pilot at leisure is a fearsome creature, to be sure." "Just so," said Uncle, with a slight smile. "And a bored dragon, 12 times more so." "There is that," Dulcie acknowledged, and used her chin to point at the entertainment's screen. "There is a news packet," she said. "It might make for an amusing hour." They had, of course, received a news packet as part of the station's service. It would be old news, space being wide, and Gileadi not well positioned within it. Still, there was sometimes something of interest in such packets, and they were, as Dulcie said, often amusing. "It might, at that," Uncle said. "I will brew tea."
That was another entry in the complete audiobook serialization of Alliance of Equals by Sharon Lee and Steve Miller. And that's it for the podcast. Thanks to podcast theme composer Ruth Judkowitz.
And Rockstar treatment and a dozen 150% off coupons for the car wash where the Mobius strip of space-time is taped together, plus showers of thanks and gratitude to Eric Flint and Mike Resnick, authors of the Gods of Sagittarius.
Please join us next time here at the hammering heart of science fiction and fantasy, and keep reaching for the stars.